Hey, Kyle, I find that I can fall into the place of peace and everything is okay, but I can't always tell if it's authentic or just a means of bypassing an uncomfortable emotion. Particularly when I'm feeling disappointed in one of my relationships, I struggle with letting things go while being in the place of oneness versus standing up for myself and revealing the other person to the other person that I'm feeling hurt or in the connection. I want to be able to process my feelings without needing other people. I get it. Let's just go to that point. I want to be able to process my feelings without needing other people to process them with me. So Kyla, that's your pattern. And guess what? That's a great question for me because that's my coriest pattern. Like I'm always like, I can't release shit until there's someone sitting there with me. So if you're dating me, I'm sitting here telling you all the shit that I'm going through. And then you'll be like, well, why didn't you just blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, no, hold on. I'm processing my shit. And for some reason, I can't do it without you here. So Kyla, what I'm learning is that my belief that I have to have that is a lie. And how do I heal that? Well, there's times where I have pain and I want to call a person, but I realize that that's an actual addiction now feeding that pattern for me. Now, if you're someone who never calls someone, then being alone might be your addiction and reaching out would be growth. But Kyla and I, which is probably, we have the same thing and that's probably why our names are so close, has the same pattern as me. I can't process shit unless there's a person sitting across from me. Why is that? So and an even better question is that the truth? Is that the highest truth? Who else has that pattern? I can't figure out shit unless there's someone sitting there. And then you go, no one's here with me, so no one gives a shit about me, right? Because they don't stay in the room with me. But most people don't understand your weird specific thing that you have or that I have. So we go, no one cares about me because I can't get through these thoughts unless that person's there. But they don't have the same wiring as you. So they don't know that's their job and they don't have the desire for that job because they got their own specific wiring that wants you to do something that you have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Like you can't process shit without them there, and they have shit like they need space from you and they think you don't love them unless you give them space. So if you date someone that's avoidant while you're anxious, you're going to go in there and they're going to need space and both of you guys think the other person doesn't care about you. But Kyla, your ultimate growth, and anyone else who has this, is to have moments where you start to feel pain. Feel the desire to call someone to process it with them, and then don't. And I'm telling you this because this is what I've been doing a little bit more the last couple months. Like my little Home Depot trip where I'm just like, I feel pain. I feel like no one wants to hear about it. I feel like I don't want to call anyone about it. And I just sit with it. I went to a restaurant and I didn't have a phone and it was so weird because I'm just sitting there at a restaurant just looking at people because I don't know, and everyone feels weird. I'm just like, I don't look down. I feel like I'm required to have a phone, right? But I'm just like alone and I'm sitting there and I feel all these emotions coming up. And then I have a belief that I wish someone could hear me. And I notice that belief is a belief now. And so instead of me calling someone, I go, I'm just going to spend 5 more hours with this pain. So what Kyla says is sitting with the pain by myself sometimes leaves me feeling like there's a gap in the relationship, like I'm not revealing myself fully to the other person. Let's say that again. Sometimes sitting with the pain by myself leaves me feeling like there's a gap in the relationship, like I'm not revealing myself fully to the other person. So let that be there for a second. Right? Let that be there for a second. Let that be there. Let the gap be there. And it's not a gap in the relationship. It's a gap in your body. And your belief is it's in the relationship. This is a really big deal. Let that be there for a second. It's not a gap in the relationship. It's a gap in your body. So when people are in relationships, when they think the person's not here to talk, see it this way. Imagine this. By the way, how many of you always wish the person you're dating would get something or do the inner work themselves or whatever else, right? Does anyone else have that? Right? Okay. Yep. Or your friend or your parents or whatever. Here's what that is. Imagine that you're in a relationship and you're attached to this person. And when you're totally attached to the person, you believe you can't ascend unless they do the inner work. But what you're actually here to do is break this attachment. You can keep the relationship, but break the attachment, because your attachment's not to the relationship. Your attachment's actually to usually one of your parents through the relationship. That's why it hurts so much. Your belief that your boyfriend will leave is actually like your dad would. It's the same thing. That's why it hurts so much. There's always when it hurts a lot, there's a thing under it. Okay. So instead of working on getting them to move up with you, sever this. Break off. Know that they're exactly where they're supposed to be, and see if you can love them even if they don't do that inner work. Because this isn't about them doing that inner work. This is about your fear of detaching from them. And you detaching from them is not necessarily leaving the relationship. It's you breaking off the belief that you and them are the same thing and that they have to do the inner work themselves. And I'm totally guilty of that. I have that all the time where, I'm like, I wish they'd get this or they'd move up, but they're in their journey and they're totally moving up fine. And we're sitting here going, I'm here to coach everyone in the world so that I don't feel abandoned. And now everyone's got to do the inner work at your pace so that you don't feel abandoned, right? And no one can do that. No one can keep up with it. So our job is to break off from the attachment, find the ultimate version of ourselves and see what shows up. And a lot of times when you do that, they then start to do the inner work because they see the butterfly that you are versus you're trying to keep them going up, right? This is a really, really big deal, right? So Kyla, what do you think of that? That's kind of what I feel about that, that your new thing, the new pattern is not needing other people to process through things. Now I get you're totally wired to. I get that you deep down really feel and believe that, but there's a you that can override that. The more you meditate, the more you get in the moment, and it'll still release things at its pace. And then maybe every once in a while you bring up a bunch of shit and it doesn't leave, and you gently talk to someone. But I want you to, and cry then, but I want you to release the belief that the only way to get seen is someone staring at you and nodding. You don't need that. Right? Like that I've had that a lot. Like we got to work through this. I have found recently, I've always had a belief we got to work through everything. And I have found magical times where there were things that were not resolved with other people. And I went into surrender and we all did our own thing. And then answers just showed up and healed themselves. And there was much less to talk about. And it wasn't in that addictive, we got to figure this out, this thing. It was like, oh, I was in my patterns. You were in your patterns. We're crying it out. I actually just feel the energy of that pain has gone. And you can move to a place now, if you want to, where you can resolve almost every issue with yourself. And then life will change it. There was a thing an issue in my body about someone that I know, and then they hung out with me yesterday and created a total new exciting plan, and it totally healed itself. And it was just like, wow, like there's like a whole new world was created. And I was just like, God's got it. I want you to remember this. God's got it. And you need to start to learn to move like God's got it. Does this make sense? You need to start to move like God's got it, and not just say God's got it and then stay in the panic. Not say that, God's got it and then live in the circumstance and that you can't move until it's changed. That's a sign of a belief system. When you are glued to a circumstance, that's a sign of the trauma that you're scared you'll feel if you release it. And you might for a second, but then it'll be alchemized and then it'll be cried out a little bit more. If you know God's got it now, merge with God, connect to God. Like part of the process of healing with the people that I healed with without doing any work on healing it was we were all meditating a shitload. And then like God came in and synchronistically answered a ton of stuff. And this is when I started going, oh my God, like I don't even have to resolve shit with people anymore. And the belief that I have to resolve shit with people is what causes my ego to take over and try to do it. And it's never as good as just God goes, I got it. They're having their own breakthroughs. They're gonna come to you with the same breakthroughs that you're having. And you don't have to explain it to them and coach them up or anything. We all are going through it. So the world is, and by the way, think of that, how that applies to everything. How you see the world as this thing falling apart. God's got it. Don't get too caught in trying to fix that, right? God's got that. It's falling apart in front of your eyes. How fast is the world moving right now? Dude, whistleblowers coming out, people calling shit out all over the place. Things are like, it's weird. Like it's just like truth coming out, all this stuff. Holy shit, God's got it. Stay in this thing. Stop trying to fix over here. That's a declaration, God, I got it, egoically. There's a lot trying to unfold in your body, and a lot of things you deep down believe that deeper down aren't true. And you get to know what life is like soon without that deep wounded belief that you are what people think about you, or you are your money, or there isn't enough, or there is a too much. You aren't any of that. Surrender that. Nothing is as true